Hey, are you someone who wants to switch your job, but you're not doing that because you have to make that boring portfolio? Well, the good news is this video is just for you. In this video, I will be talking about 7 things that might be keeping you stuck on that portfolio, and I'm sure by end of this video, you will be motivated enough to start working on that portfolio and get that job. Every time I was working on a case study and I felt like I need some inspirations to look at, I used to Google these ideas. And each time I Googled an idea, it just felt so perfect that I really wanted to capture it in my own portfolio, in my own case study. And every time I used to close that inspiration tab and get back to my own work, I used to just start comparing it. And because I started comparing it, everything that I was working on felt not so good. So I came up with an idea. I used to time box my inspiration hours to just look up inspirations. And before looking at these inspirations, I used to actually make a list of what is it exactly that I'm looking for. And instead of just having that one inspiration and trying to copy it, so I used to just come up with multiple examples, look at them in one go, see what I like about them, draw the common patterns, and try to implement that area of those inspirations. That way, it never felt like a pressure to copy that exact thing and get onto that idea of perfection whenever I'm looking at examples. Now that we are talking about inspiration and the idea of getting too inspired sometimes, it might lead to another problem naturally. That is perfection. We are always so concerned with getting it right than to actually complete it. And because that happens, our portfolio never goes out. It just keeps on adding more and more anxiety to us. So my suggestion here is do it, share it, get feedback, and then learn from your mistake. That's the best way to go about it. Now, since we're talking about inspiration and perfection, there is another thing that makes us obsess over the idea of perfection. It's free advices from other people. Each time you take your portfolio to someone, they will give you feedback. And each time you get a feedback, you stop looking at your case study from your perspective and you start looking at it from their feedback. And that really loses your personality. You need to understand the difference between feedbacks that you can implement and you cannot. Every time I used to complete my case study, I used to doubt myself, is it still ready? Let me take one more feedback. And every time I used to go to that new person, they were coming from their own context. And at the end of this process, when I looked at my case study, it was completely different from what I wanted it to be. Now, the reason I'm telling you to look at your case study from your own perspective is because end of the day, you will be presenting the story. You need to feel confident about the message delivered and always make sure you filter out the feedback you get. There will be relevant feedback and there will be irrelevant feedback. Do not end up following every single thing. Now, since we're talking about originality and you're part of the story, naturally there will be times when the design project looks amazing in your head, but when you actually sit to work down on your case study, you feel it's not that great. What am I even going to write about it? You've worked day in, day out in this project, so your impact might naturally feel very basic to you. But trust me when I say it, even the small things count in a project. In order to solve this problem, you need to really sit down with yourself and ask questions like, who have you helped with this project? Who has been impacted through this project? Have you changed somebody's life? How? When? Where? And all these questions about your project, they really help you understand the impact you have created. Sit down and document them. And even better if you can actually document your project on a weekly basis. Talking about life projects, now some of you might have NDA projects or client-sensitive information that you can't share. If these are the only projects that you have to be shown in your portfolio, that might be a big problem. But worry not, I'm here for that. So the answer here is scrubbing. Not scrubbing your clothes, scrubbing the client-sensitive data. See, the biggest challenge your company or your client has is to not share the data in public. So simply, we will just we will scrub off that company logo and use a fake logo instead. Do not mention the client name whatsoever. Do not mention any sort of client data numbers or any sort of information or dashboard where it shows the actual data. Use dummy data, use dummy numbers, and use dummy logos as well. In fact, if possible, just go ahead and change the color palette as well. The idea here is to present your design, to present how your mind works, how you came up with that solution and the impact it created. It doesn't really matter even if you change the specifics of your design. And yes, make sure to add a disclaimer that says some pieces of this information or this case study has been changed or modified due to client-sensitive information and NDA agreement. Once you do that, your recruiter understands that it's not the exact design, but they will judge you based on how your mind works, what was the problem, and what is the solution. In fact, these projects actually help you score better in your interviews because they are live projects, and mentioning that there is an NDA or there is client sensitive information, it actually makes it more authentic. Whenever somebody asks you to describe more about yourself, do you often find yourself scratching your head and wondering what to say? I'm sure when you're making a portfolio, it might be even worse and you're not quite sure how to describe yourself. Here's a quick tip. Before actually writing your introduction, just take a pen and paper and think, if your friends had to describe you in 5 words, what would those be? Now, what would be 3 adjectives you would use to describe yourself? Think about the company you are looking forward to join. Do they belong to a certain domain or do they value certain kind of employees? Just write that quality down. Is there a certain quality about you that makes you stand out as a designer? If you're not quite sure, just look at the projects you are doing and the kind of projects you're putting in your portfolio. If you really enjoy a certain part about them, then that's your sweet spot. And lastly, if you're somebody who has a background from a different profession, then just write down your former background. Now that you're done writing all these things, just look at them and draw a common pattern. Now try writing your introduction from these keywords. Instead of feeling lost about where to start, you actually have a great place to start. Make sure to stitch it into a good sentence and voila, there is your bio. Now moving on to the biggest struggle that people face, jumping to multiple case studies. While making a portfolio, everybody struggles to focus on one case study at a time. And we often have this urge of jumping onto the next case study or just use something as a distraction because it might feel like a lot of effort and a lot of hard work to sit and work on that one case study. Sometimes you even have to sit and remember all the information from the past. It might feel exhausting, but it is supposed to be that way. We often make this mistake of just jumping around to different case studies and taking a break. The more you jump to other tasks and other jobs, it makes your process slow. Now imagine if you're working on case study 1 and you think that, hey, let me take a break and in the meantime I'll work on second and third case study. They might be at a different stage and they might have a completely different context. You might not realize it, but your brain is actually putting in extra work to switch that context. And when you come back, you have lost the context of what this case study was. You have to go through it again to recall what you did last. So my suggestion here is, no matter how lost, how depressed or how anxious you feel at that time, make sure you just focus on that one case study and complete that. Only when you complete that one case study, you move on to the next one. And if you feel that case study needs feedback, you can always publish it and get feedback on it. And I would highly request, do not make changes in this case study until you have completed all of them one by one. Once that is done, you can always come back, revisit and make changes and keep learning from your mistakes. Well, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a thumbs up. It helps us reach more people and stay more motivated to create regular content for you people. Thank you so much. Happy designing.